Pass Around the Smile is like your go-to friend, the one that lifts you up and backs you till the end. She's there to guide and inspire, challenge and teach, and remind you that your best self isn't out of reach. Self-development, manifestation, self-love and more, it's time to trust the process more than ever before. Welcome to Pass Around the Smile, the podcast. I'm your host, Cleo Massey, and I am so glad you're here. Let the magic begin. Cooper Chapman is the smiley human behind the Good Human Factory, a company which teaches science-backed skills such as mindfulness, gratitude, kindness, empathy, and taking responsibility to thousands of people around the world. I've had the pleasure of attending a couple of Cooper's events, and his passion for helping people manage their mental health and find mindful moments within each day is so inspiring and infectious. Growing up in Narrabeen, Cooper was a professional surfer for more than 10 years. His interest in mental health was prompted by his father's bout with depression and the suicide of two family friends. Meditating on a regular basis and practicing mindfulness helps Cooper manage his anxiety and perform at a high level, whether he's competing in a contest or giving a speech. Through his workshops, podcast, merch and community, he inspires people to think differently about mental health and well-being. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this chat. Let's jump into it. So Cooper Chapman, welcome to the Pass Around the Smile podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here and see a little beautiful baby, and she passed around the smile to us.
Yes,
so it's very energised and ready to have a beautiful chat this morning.
She's so cute. She has me lacking in sleep, but it's amazing how babies do give you that energy, hey?
For sure.
They're so special.
Yeah,
They're
very
so
special. I've just become an uncle for the first time, so
little
my
Bobby.
little niece Bobby is very cute. It's been a nice first week getting to, I live next door to my sister, so
oh, do you?
been back and
Right
forward
there.
and helping out with a bit of washing where I can and throwing some stuff in the bin when I can to help them out. But yeah, it's been really nice to spend some time with them too.
That's so special. She's so cute. And it's been a long journey for them, hey? So
it's been a very long journey.
Very special little soul there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't we start by just, you tell us a little bit about yourself, my community. I know they're going to love you. It just kind of what you do, why you do it, how you got into it, and then we can just jump into a big chat from there.
Yeah, amazing. So my name's Cooper. I used to be a professional surfer, but now I've found myself working in the mental health space, trying to inspire people to think a bit differently about mental health. I feel like so often when I heard the word mental health growing up and throughout the media, it always came with a bit of a negative connotation, or not even negative, but it was always positioned as mental illness in my mind, always around depression, anxiety, suicide, things that are very important topics to talk about, but I just never felt like it aligned that well with me. I didn't feel very relatable to any of that. So now I try and encourage people to look at mental health through a different lens and realise that we all have mental health. Only 20% of us are going to be diagnosed with a mental illness. So if the 80% of us without a mental illness can develop the skills and have the daily habits and rituals that are scientifically proven to make us feel good, then maybe less of us will end up with mental illness. So yeah, now I travel around the country running workshops with high school students, with corporate groups, and just sharing my story and sharing different learnings that I've had through guests on my podcast and just my sort of quest for knowledge when it comes to well-being and trying to think a bit outside the square and give people some skills to take into their life to make their life a little bit better.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I've had the pleasure of coming to a couple of your events. And what I love so much about what you do is removing the stigma, I guess, is like the number one around the enormity of the word mental health. Mm-hmm. But you have such effective but simple tools that you give people to help with anxiety and when, the negative thoughts are spiraling. So what do we do on those days where, you're getting caught in that rat race, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling tight, the negative thoughts are coming in. What do we do there?
I mean, it is tough because, for most of us, 75% of our thoughts are negative. And I think, it's kind of argued between either if we have 60,000 or 6,000 thoughts a day. The neuroscientist I spoke to recently tried to tell me, or told me that it's kind of been debunked that it's 6,000 now.
Oh, so, really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
It's kind of argued, I guess, in the neuroscience world. But say we have 6,000 thoughts a day, 75% of them are negative. That's 4,500 negative thoughts on average a day for most of us. And then 95% of them are usually repetitive, the same thoughts that we thought yesterday. So for me, one of the most important things to do is meditate every day. I know you're big on meditation and just taking the moment if it's 5-10 minutes a day, just to slow down and kind of witness those thoughts and not attach to them for the whole day like most of us do. So a big one for me, I try and encourage people every day to try and spend a few minutes meditating, whether it's to a guided meditation, whether it's just sitting there listening to your thoughts, or whether it's, you know, getting outside in nature and just listening to the sounds of nature. So a big one for me is meditation. There's obviously so much great research now out there to show the impact of meditating regularly, and a lot of people have such a resistance to it because of, I guess, the noise of the thoughts that are up there. But one of the best ways I've found to slow them down and to calm them is to sit with them regularly. And another analogy I guess I like to use is, it's almost like, I like to think, if we don't sit down with those thoughts from time to time, it's like we've got a garden up in our head, and the more that we just let it overgrow without going up there and trimming it down and, you know, cleaning it up a little bit, it is going to get quite overwhelming. So for me, a big one is just trying to find a regular meditation routine in your life. And then another big one for me is practicing gratitude every single day. It's such a buzzword, I guess, when it comes to mental health and when it comes to well-being, is gratitude. And quite often you tell people, oh, do you practice gratitude? And you kind of get the eye roll, like, oh yeah. I tell people, oh yeah, I'm grateful for this and this, but I didn't become happier, so it doesn't work. It's like, I say to people, it's like going to the gym and doing one sit-up and looking for a six-pack. Like, it doesn't really work like that. Gratitude's about a way of life, looking at things through the perspective of what are the good things rather than what are the bad things. And our negative thoughts take us to the bad things so often. Having a gratitude practice for me just allows me to sort of redirect that attention to the positive stuff. And there always is some positive things going in our life, even through the darkest days, but sometimes we just have to, you know, look a little bit harder for them. So they're two ones that I really encourage people to develop. For me, a big thing is just routine and having those healthy habits throughout our day that can just be a bit of an anchor point to bring us back when we do sort of get stuck in that hustle and bustle of life. Just to have those daily rituals and habits that we come back to is a really good starting point for me.
Yeah, and that's what I love about what you do and what you share on your social media. Like, you're such a positive person to follow on social media, but it's doable and it's relatable. I think there's so much noise and so much pressure on social media these days, and, you know, the whole wellness industry is almost becoming fashionable, which is great, but sometimes, you know, the message it puts a lot of pressure on us. But you're saying, you know, 5 minutes of meditation a day, I mean, it has the power to change your whole week. And anyone can find 5 minutes. I know that I have a lot of mums that listen to this podcast and they might say, Cleo, I don't have 5 minutes, but you have to honour yourself enough, and you have to up your self-worth to give yourself that space for 5 minutes, even if it is just, like you said, you don't have to get into this like deep woo-woo meditation. I think you mentioned, you know, meditation can be sitting in nature for 5 minutes. Like,
for sure.
Yeah, I really like that. It's relative, I think.
Even if, you do get the excuse quite often, I don't have the 5 minutes, but if anyone listening can go on their phone and look at their screen time and there isn't more than 20 minutes on social media a day, then maybe you don't have the time.
Yeah.
But most of us do have the time. We just don't prioritize it to do something that is healthy because we try and escape from that noise rather than actually sit into it from time to time, which can be very intimidating sometimes. But the more we do it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, I agree. And I found, like, even for myself, you know, I will find time in days to, like, exercise, for example, because you get that immediate feeling of satisfaction and you also get the physical results. Whereas people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to meditate tomorrow, and then they put it off and they don't do it because you can't see the physical results or feel that. Well, I mean, I do feel the instant, you know, good feelings from meditation, but some people don't yet because, like you said, you have to work up to it. But we got to prioritize our mental health.
Absolutely. And a big one for me, like, which I do, I love, like most of us, snoozing the alarm and, like, staying in bed for longer. So what I try and do now is when I wake up in the morning, I'll get out of bed, brush my teeth, go to the toilet, but then I'll get back into bed and I'll put on, like, a 20-minute hybrid of, like, a 10-minute breath work into a 10-minute meditation, especially now in winter. I mean, it's not that cold on the Gold Coast, but me and my partner will get back into bed and spend an extra 20 minutes. So it might be putting your alarm on 30 minutes earlier than normal, get up, do your business, brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, and then spend that 20 minutes still in bed, but doing an exercise that's going to bring a bit of clarity throughout your day. It's going to energize you if you do a bit of breath work. And the way that I kind of describe it is, the thing that I feel when I meditate regularly is when something comes up that I normally would react to, I almost have like this microsecond to be able to respond to situations. And it's so subtle, but I find, you know, it allows you to take back control rather than be at the control of sort of like the external and all the things going on that are out of our control.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I think the power of meditation, like you said, it has such a flow-on effect for our whole day. And little things like that you might not realise. Say you get into a confrontation with a colleague at work and you have that ability to just kind of slow down and see through the lens of positivity, or you have more clarity. Like, it's just so powerful.
Yeah, I read something this morning as well. It's like, and this kind of relates to it. I've been reading this book called The End of Mental Illness by Dr. Daniel Amen. Fascinating book. And it wasn't even talking about meditation. He was talking about something else, but I think this relates really well to it. This idea of responding rather than reacting is you can be curious rather than furious. And I was like that's a new one to me. Like the idea of when someone does something that wrongs you, instead of being furious about it, being curious, why did they do that? Maybe having a bit of empathy for the person and actually not being furious but being curious. And I was like, I like that one. It's a way that you kind of take back control rather than your emotions and, you know, your reaction being in control. It's like, no, I'm curious. Why is that person being like that to me? They might have just like lost their grandpa and they're just kind of putting it on me. It's like sometimes we can, you know, just those subtle little cues. And for me, like quotes at the back of your head are just so nice sometimes. Like, that was one that I learned this morning reading that I was like, I'm going to use that one.
I really like that, and it makes you feel so much better as a human when you walk away from a situation and you have reacted in a way that, you know, is calm and kind and empathetic, rather than, jumping to that fury.
And judgment. And, you know,
jealousy, comparison, like it just all comes out. And before you were saying the 6,000 thoughts, you know, that we have a day, and 75%, was it 75% of them being negative? I find personally so many of my own negative thoughts are to do with the external, with what other people say and do, or what other people don't say and don't do that I expect more of. And I'm learning that doesn't need to affect me. It doesn't need to change my day. It doesn't need to change my mood. It's like we need to focus on what we can control, and that's our own.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a big one.
So tell me about your Instagram and the club that you've created, because it's huge, right? It has a huge impact.
I started a thing called the 1% Good Club. So I can give you the kind of explanation behind it. So I had been kind of doing my workshops with the Good Human Factory for about 12 months. And I'd tell people about meditation and I'd talk about mindfulness and I'd talk about gratitude and kindness. And I knew personally I wasn't doing it every single day. I was definitely doing it more than most people, but I was like, if I want to see the benefits of this, I want to do it every single day. Yeah. So I was doing a meditation one day and I was like, surely we can all agree that we should be able to give 1% of our day to our mental health. We've got 100% in a day. Surely we can give one of those percentages to our mental health. So 1% of a 24-hour day is just over 14 minutes. It's 1,440 minutes in 24 hours. 14 minutes, just over, is 1% of your day. So I was like, okay, what can we fit into 14 minutes a day that's good for our mental health? And the two things that we've already touched on today that are big in my world are mindfulness, meditation, and gratitude. So I was like, okay, maybe every single morning we should do 10 minutes of meditation, and every single night we should stop and reflect for 4 minutes about our day and write down 3 things that we're grateful for. But I also knew we were more susceptible to maintaining a healthy habit if we have an accountability group around us. So 1,090 days ago of the recording of this, almost 3 years ago now, I started this thing called the 1% Good Club. So 1% of your day for your mental health, where every single morning I send a link to a 10-minute meditation.
Every single morning.
And then every single night for the last 3 years, I've put an Instagram story up with a photo from my day, and then I write 3 things that I'm grateful for from the day.
Oh, so that's, I was seeing them as 3 mindful moments and 3 things you're grateful for.
Those are 3 things I'm grateful for the day.
Wow.
I then send that to these group chats on Instagram. So now there's 9 group chats with about 150 in each group chat. So there's just under 1,500 members, where every single morning they get a link sent to them to click on the meditation, and every single night they write their 3 gratitudes in the group chat. And then there's all these communities, and the reason there's 9 of them is because you can only have 250 in a group chat on Instagram. So they're like individual group chats where there's these communities of people who write 3 things they're grateful for and send it in the group to stay accountable every day. I think there's been like 700,000 gratitudes sent in over the past 3 years from just strangers all around the world. And that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of with the work I've done. I mean, I've presented workshops for Apple, Telstra, Red Bull, Amazon, Westpac, Coles. Like, I've had some really cool moments. I've spoken to 40,000 students at like almost 100 schools around the country. But the thing that I think I'm most proud of is the 1% Good Club, because it's a free community. Anyone listening right now can join. And it's just a way to keep people accountable to go, all right, I want to give 1% of my day to my mental health. And the communities that have been formed are just so special. Like, there's people, because they've been in it for 2 years together, read each other's gratitudes, even though they're strangers to each other. They've never met, most of them, but they see the person's things that go well every day. So they start to form a relationship with these communities. So yeah, if anyone's listening right now and wants to join and they're like, oh, you know what, I want to be part of this 1% community. I want to put my hand up for 1% of my day. As I said, it's completely free. All you have to do is send at The Good Human Factory on Instagram a DM saying, I want to join the club. You'll get added into a group chat. You'll get a meditation sent every morning. You can click the link. You'll get a little prompt to practice gratitude every night. And yeah, it's just a beautiful community. So that's my little 1% Good Club.
Absolutely incredible and so inspiring. Like, you're changing the world. You really are, because 700,000 messages among these groups.
Yeah, so everyone writes 3 gratitudes. Yeah. So on average, I mean, now there's like 1,000. There's probably, to be honest, like 300 active people every day. They write 3 things each day. So there's 900 a day. There's been over 1,100 days. So if it was 1,000 a day at 1,100 days, it'd be 1.1 million. There hasn't been, the groups have grown. So I think it's between 500,000 and 700,000 gratitudes have been sent in, which the impact is just almost huge. Immeasurable. Like, I've had so many messages and surveys that I've given to the group of just people who have, like, had their life change because they stop and reflect every day on the good things. They have the meditation practice in the morning. So that's just my way to give back to my community. So many people support what I do by buying my merchandise, by listening to my podcast, by booking me to come and run workshops. So that's just my way to give something back to the community for free. And it's for my own accountability, to be honest. By having to do that, now I've practiced gratitude every day for 3 years, religiously every night, because I've got these groups of people relying on it as well.
And the consistency is so key. Like, I love seeing your stories that you put up for the 1% Good Club. It inspires me. It's infectious. Like, it's just so inspiring. I know so many of my community are going to be jumping on this group.
Oh, thank you. Like, looking forward to meeting the community. Come join on in.
They're the nicest. Cool, they're so lovely, my community. But yeah, it's just amazing. Like, you should be so proud of that impact. And again, going back to what I love so much about what you do is it's doable. Well, it's so achievable.
Well, the thing is, like, mental health awareness is at an all-time high, and I've kind of positioned myself in a way that I feel like 99% of the mental health industry is the mental illness industry, which is so important. When you're struggling, here's the numbers to seek help. It ain't weak to speak. Check in on your mates. Like, here's how you spot the signs when your friends are struggling. Like, I will never discount the work of that side of the mental health industry, but it just, like, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an expert in this field. I've spoken to hundreds of experts on my podcast, and I've kind of brought down the information into what I think are practical, easy to implement, daily science-backed skills, but actually give people action, because I feel like mental health awareness, all-time high, but the numbers are getting worse. So it's time for mental health action. It's for the 80% of us who don't have a mental illness to develop daily habits, skills, rituals that are going to make us feel good. It's 100% of us, even if you do have a mental illness, hey, this stuff's going to help us. And so many of us are surviving in life. We're sitting at a 5 out of 10 or a 4 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10. And we're just kind of happy there. Like, we should be thriving through life. We only get one go at it. What are the things that we can do to continually grow through life rather than just go through life? Like, how do we continue to expand our knowledge, our learnings, and implement this stuff to make ourselves feel good, because we owe it to ourselves and to the people around us. Because when we start to implement healthier habits, the people around us get the better version of us, but then they get inspired as well to maybe make some healthy choices and changes in their lifestyle as well.
Yeah, and like I work a lot with like energy, and you just imagine all the good energy. Like there are literally machines that photograph energy leaving the body. When you're doing this for yourself, the energy that you are giving your loved ones.
Up.
It's amazing. And like you look at, the 1% Good Club, like it's literally the energy is illuminating out to millions of people. Like it's so exciting.
Yeah, the ripple of it. Me too. I just love it too. It's just so cool to, give people action pieces rather than continue to bang out around like the amount of suicides there are this year, or you know how much we need help and all of the problems that we have, and you know here's the number to call, you can go and get on a free mental health plan. Like there's so many great things that are basically like nets to catch us, but it's like, why are we like catching all these fish? Like what's happening upstream? Why are they all ending up down here in the nets? Like okay, let's start with, you know, proactive daily you know, actions that we all take, rather than letting us sort of slip down that treadmill that is life down to, you know, struggle street.
Yeah, and I like what you said before. It was kind of around the realm of like focusing on what you do have rather than what you don't have. And, you know, when you are going through the trenches and you're having shitty days or weeks or months, there are some pockets of positivity that you can kind of find and grab onto, even if they're so tiny, and just start to grow on that.
Yeah, it's just gratitude, focusing on thoughts like appreciation, not expectation. Like what's the things that are going all right, and obviously it's very relative to people's challenges in life, and I'll never discount that some people are going through some of the most traumatic things you'll ever hear of, but I've interviewed hundreds of people now who have had some very difficult moments in their life and who have come out the other side. So just maintaining hope and focusing on those little things each day that you can do can just, you know, expand into a life that we all dream of. Yeah,
and guys, I'll say it at the end, but Cooper's podcast is incredible. Like
you're going to come on soon for a chat.
We'll very exciting soon. Yeah, but it's such a good podcast. You interview such interesting, inspiring people. So I'll put the link in the show notes.
Thank you.
But let's take it back a little bit. I feel like you and I have some similarities in that we both grew up in quite competitive industries. So I grew up in the acting industry, and for me personally, anxiety would come up a lot because it was so competitive. I was constantly facing rejection. You know, if I didn't get the role, essentially I felt I wasn't good enough. Like I didn't get it. And I know you grew up in the surfing industry, and I guess they're both competitive, and you're kind of striving to get a place, or for me, a role. How did you deal with the competitive nature of that industry, and did you ever get stuck in comparison and things like that?
Yeah, massively. I think looking back upon reflection, like I definitely wasn't the sort of guy I am today. Back then, so much of my self-worth and identity was wrapped up in external validation, kind of like you just alluded to. What other people think of us, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure was such a big one for me when I was growing up. If I won a surf comp, I'd feel really good about myself, and, you know, getting pats on the back from sponsors, friends, family. If I was doing poorly, I kind of felt embarrassed, ashamed to be around people. And I rode that roller coaster throughout my whole junior career up until, you know, my mid-20s. And when I was kind of in my early 20s, I got exposed to, I guess, a different perspective and way of viewing myself, and it took me years to really develop this perspective and get better at it, and I still am, but it changed my life. So when I was like in my early 20s, kind of riding this roller coaster, as a junior surfer, it was okay. I had a pretty successful career, so as much as there were downs, there was quite a lot of ups. So I kind of, you know, had a bit of ego and rode that roller coaster of, you know, kind of not taking on advice from my dad and some people who really mattered to me, because I thought I knew better because these other cool people in the industry gave me advice and props. Whereas looking back, I'm like, a lot of those people didn't even really care about me. They were just like looking to get their own benefit out of, you know, my success. So I had this chat with my sports psychologist right when I kind of progressed from the junior tour in Australia, kind of big fish, small pond in Australia, top 3 here, to small fish, big pond on the international scene. And as well as my results starting to decline, my wellbeing started to decline, my mental health at times started to get a bit tricky. I'd had some family history with mental illness. I lost an uncle to suicide. My dad struggled a bit. So I was always kind of aware and almost fearful that I might run down the family history of mental illness. So when I spoke to my sports psychologist about kind of going like, I'm kind of struggling, but I felt this embarrassment and shame to really get help from a psychologist, but I sort of told my sports psych this stuff to try and improve my performance. And that's when he challenged me and said, like, pro surfing's what you do, mate, but it's not who you are. Like, who are you? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, so many of us base our self-worth, our identity, our self-esteem on external validation and our results, on achievements, on what people think of us. And I was like, well, what else can I base it on? And he said something that really changed the way that I view my own life. And he said, what are your values, Cooper? And I was like, oh, like kindness, respect, honesty, all these ones that mum and dad had told me about, these buzzwords. And he said, yeah, but how well do you actually live to those values, mate? And that was the first time that I'd actually really started to reflect and think about my actions and go like, you know what, maybe these values that I say are mine aren't really mine. I'm not living to them. So that sent me on a bit of a journey throughout my 20s to understand who I am and what my values are, and really go deep into, some different courses, but also reading plenty of books and a lot of autobiographies and biographies and watching documentaries and just being curious. What are these people who I look up to who are healthy and happy and successful? Like, what values do I see them have that I want to see in myself? And I kind of just went on this journey to understand what those values are. And ever since doing this work, it's allowed me to be a lot less swayed by external validation, because I'm like, you know what? My job each day is to wake up and try and live to those values. Everything else in my life will fall around in the way it's meant to. If I live solid to these values, they can guide my decision making. They can guide, my happiness. Like, if I'm not living to the values, then I've got no one to blame except for myself. But if I am living to the values and I don't feel great, then okay, maybe then, I can adjust and try and, do something more. But you kind of take the control back into your own court when you start to develop, I guess, personal values and be guided by them. And that's, the journey that I feel like I'm on, continually evolving what those values are. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
That's amazing and so
very
inspiring.
Very long.
No, I loved it. This is what I want. This is what the people want. This is perfect. It goes to show the power of self-reflection, doesn't it? That you had the ability to actually understand and look at where your energy was going, what you didn't like, what you did want for yourself. That's so hard to do. And I think so many people struggle to take that first step because they think a bit of self-reflection is going to be uncomfortable, because it is.
Absolutely. It should be.
It should
Especially
be.
if you want to change and you want to, be in a different place than you're at.
Yeah. But I've also found like a lot of my community say things to me like, they've done it for a week or they've done it for a couple of weeks. They don't see change. Of course, like it's the long game, and you have to get deep and uncomfortable and kind of unravel what's at the bottom for everything to then, like you said, everything started to flow around you. And I guess I love how like the Good Human Factory and everything that you do and Pass Around a Smile kind of aligns, but like I talk about it from an energetics and manifestation point of view, and you come in with like the scientific based results and mental health kind of side, and it's just so nice to see them marry up. And it's true, we need to spread our energy and do things for us. Like you honored yourself enough. You had the self-worth after years in the surfing industry of being pulled down and giving your energy to those other people who maybe didn't care as much as your parents, for example, to then be like, no, I need this for me and I need to go deeper. And this self-reflection, it goes to show it actually does change your life. It's not just a bit of meditation, a bit of journaling, a bit of reflection. It changes everything.
Absolutely. Our perspective's absolutely everything. I mean, from the outside looking in, I was living the most extraordinary life ever. I was traveling the world, going surfing with my friends and getting paid to do it, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. And then the kind of tail end of my surf career where I lost my sponsorship and I was working full-time as a tradie to fund my career was some of the years that I enjoyed the travel and stuff the most. For one, because I'd had to work harder to get there. But for two, that I'd changed my perspective. Instead of having expectation of like, oh, why me? The guys that's ranked lower than me are getting paid more than me by sponsors and I'm here working a job site. I kind of flipped that perspective and went, I'm still traveling the world going surfing with my friends. Like I've got it so much better than so many people. And not that it's about comparison, but just being like, you know what, like what do I have? Like I'm healthy, I'm traveling the world as an athlete with my friends going surfing. Sure, I have to work a bit of time at home. And yeah, even though they were the years that were probably the most difficult to be able to financially support myself, they were the years that I enjoyed the most because I, felt like a different person traveling towards the end of my career. And there was like one moment that I remember really clearly, because I'd learnt this stuff, but I'd still go back to the victim mentality like we all do. We kind of, flow between the two. And I remember I was sitting in South Africa at this place called Bolido, just out of Durban for this event. And I'd kind of just lost my sponsor. I was sponsored by Hurley for 5 or 7 years. And I was working for my friend's landscaping company and he sponsored me a little bit and gave me like basically a little bit of extra pay so I could get to this next event. And I was sitting there getting ready to paddle out for a heat, and I just remember having like the most toxic mindset of like, oh, like this guy from over in Europe's getting paid this money and he surfs worse than me, and like was just like going through all these thoughts. And then I just had this one moment where I remembered the thing that I've mentioned a few times throughout this chat, something that my dad always said to me as a kid. He said, like, appreciation, not expectation, mate. Appreciation, not expectation. And I kind of like tried to integrate that into, you know, to change how I was feeling sitting on that beach before I paddled out for this heat. And I was like, you know what, like, how lucky. My mate who I work for at home gave me extra money so I could go and surf. All the other guys that I work with at home are still at that job site digging holes, and I'm overseas surfing. Like, life's good. Like, I'm lucky, rather than, oh, I'm unlucky that I'm not, like, you know, rather than comparing across and up, I started to not compare across and down, but people that, you know, would love to be doing what I'm doing. So from that moment, I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to be happy that I'm here. I'm just going to enjoy myself. And yeah, it just changed my outlook. I got to travel the world the last few years of my career with such a positive and enjoyable outlook, rather than losing an event and changing my flight to come home early because I'm frustrated. It's like, no, I'm in a beautiful part of the world. I'm going to enjoy it. And I think it came a lot with maturity, but I really think it came down to that clarity of like, you know what, I want to live to values rather than, you know, external validation and results.
Yeah, wow. That's so inspiring. And I think you're right, like changing our perspective has the power to change our experiences.
For sure.
And it can happen in a split second. I think that's what's exciting too, is some of this stuff that we're talking about, the self-development, you know, stuff, it's not necessarily always really hard and uncomfortable work. Sometimes it can just be you had that change of thought in that instant, everything changed because again, it's energy. So things can change really quickly, which I think is really inspiring for people to hear who are really struggling at the moment, and they think, oh, but you know, the positive times are so far away. It's like they don't have to be.
Yeah, I always remember this one thing, and it's so easy to say this sometimes from people who obviously do have an amazing life from the outside looking in, but I was talking to Bob Hurley, who's the founder of Hurley. I remember it so clearly this one day. I was in Hawaii and we were there for some surf comps, and I think I just started sort of like the mental health stuff. No, actually I hadn't. I wasn't with Hurley when I'd started the Good Human Factory. I don't know why we're talking about this, but this conversation comes up in my head all the time. Just about the idea of like being happy. And he said to me one day, he was like, I just consciously make a choice every day when I wake up. I can choose to be overwhelmed and anxious today, or I can choose to be happy. I'm going to choose to be happy every single day. And he's like the most energized and happy and infectious person. So I've tried to take a little bit out of that, of what I've seen in his life, and just like, you know, every day when you wake up, you got to make a choice. Like, am I going to be overwhelmed and anxious, or am I going to choose to be happy and curious and optimistic today? And it is so hard, and I don't want to take away from people, you know, who are going through those really difficult times in life. But, you know, those days where you wake up and you're, I don't really want to go to work. It's like, I don't have to go to work. I get to go to work. Like, I've got a job. I've got, you know, people around me who, you know, care about me. Like, there's so many people that have so much less than us, especially if you're lucky enough to be listening on a device that you can listen on. If you're lucky enough to know, you know, be listening with headphones in your ear, or sitting in a car and it's coming through your car audio. Like, we're so often comparing across and up to what we want to have, rather than going, oh, you know what, I do have a lot.
Yeah. Well said. It's, and I think social media is hard for that, isn't it? With this comparison, you're looking at people's highlight reels and comparing, you know, what you have to what they have, and then all of a sudden you might get stuck in a spiral where you're wanting things that you don't actually necessarily want, but you think you want it because it looks like it makes that other person happy.
Exactly.
Or that other person abundant, or whatever it is. Yeah. How do you go being, you know, such a positive role model from the outside in? You're like this, you're the smiley human behind what you do. On the days where you're struggling, how do you kind of cope with that?
I think communication's a big one. Me and my partner have a really great relationship where, you know, we can talk to each other about things that we're struggling with. I've also got such a beautiful, close friend group who, you know, we get to chat to each other when things are going, you know, not going bad, but, you know, when we're going through those challenging moments that we're all going to go through in life, whether it be, you know, family members passing away, financial issues is always a big one for me, trying to build a business, learning how to structure and grow a business, and having days where, like, I can't pay myself this week. Like, you know, I have those stresses all the time, but I still make that choice every day. Like, I'm going to get to the end of today based on, history, I've got to the end of every other day I've been alive.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to get to the end of today. I can make the choice to be overwhelmed and flustered all day today about my challenges, or I can do it with, the optimistic outlook of like maybe good things will fall into place and the best outcome might happen in this challenge that I'm going through. And if it doesn't, I'd rather go through that moment today with an optimistic outlook than not. And quite often, and with manifestation and that sort of work, for me it seems to flow in a good direction when I'm putting good stuff out into the world, building up good karma, but also just having a optimistic outlook and like what if this happens rather than what if that happens.
Yes,
it's and it takes time to get to that, and I have the days where I'm just like absolutely not feeling it at all, and I'm like big on rest. Like if I have a day where I have that luxury that I've built a business that if I'm having a day that's quite slow with work and I'm not feeling, I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to switch off. And me and my partner are very good at, just being there with each other and talking through the challenges. Like we have a thing, we call it our full potential board. So we have like 14 healthy habits that we try and tick off every single day, because 14 times by 7 is 98. It kind of gives a nice snapshot out of 100 how you did with your sort of healthy habits a week. So we have 14, and one of them is communication. So we try and every day make sure that we spend, a bit of time actually connecting and going through the things that are challenging, rather than it just being up in our head, or even if it's a challenge with each other in our relationship, rather than resent and judge and, have something to hold on to. We talk about it and be open about it.
So it's kindness and empathy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's that's been something that's helped me. But don't get me wrong, I still have challenging days, but I just try and show up to them with a smile on my face, like, where you can be anything, choose to be positive.
Yeah, you're so inspiring. I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say about this episode, because
I don't want people to think that I'm like goo goo gaga, like everything's all good, like.
No, but you're not. You're realistic and you're honest and you communicate. And I also want to say thank you about being so honest before about the surfing industry and the struggles that you felt with, comparing yourself to the people that might be getting paid more, or, that you had more talent than this guy, because that's something that we all feel and we need to talk about more, like we can still be positive, optimistic, happy humans, but we can still talk about our struggles. We can have our healthy events to our friends and family. Like, it's so important.
For sure.
Back to like the kind of surfing and acting industry and like the criticism that you may have faced, or that I definitely face. I was listening to, I think it may have been your episode on Darling Shine a while ago, and you were talking about the difference between constructive criticism and criticism that's not
destructive.
There you go. Yeah. Talk us through that, because that really helped me kind of understand and just reflect on the years in the acting industry that I faced a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, let me just start with this. Do you reckon your whole, like, when you thought it was criticism but it was probably constructive, do you think your life would have been different if you asked yourself this question in your head when you got criticised? Where's the truth in what they're saying?
Absolutely, my life would have been so
And how much
different.
better of an actor would have you probably got if instead of taking the criticism to heart, you go, where can I improve from that? And all of us, and especially when we're young, find it so hard to take on criticism. I wish we got taught. Like, my dad told me so much when I was a kid, like, you got to learn how to lose before you learn how to win. Like, I was the biggest crier when I lost. Like, and I always relate to my dad, because he was the one who would give me advice about my surfing. He'd watch me more than anyone, and he would say to me, like, make sure you do this with your arm, or like this, and I'd always have an excuse and be like, you don't know anything. Like, I'd just like butt heads with him so much. And looking back, I'm like, I wish I just said, like, where's the truth in what he's saying? Maybe if I do that, I will, like, do that turn better, or listen to him and, like, work together on it. So, yeah, I look at criticism through the lens of kind of two ways now, which is constructive criticism and destructive criticism. Sometimes it is really hard to differentiate between the two, because our ego gets in the way and we see constructive as destructive quite often. We see someone coming at us to, and sometimes the delivery of criticism to us can be quite harsh, but that's what your best friends do, is they, call you out on your stuff to allow you to improve, rather than just, butter you up and make out like you're not the one in the wrong. Sometimes we need people to be like, no, you know what, you got that wrong. You show up late pretty often, mate. Or like, when your friend like has a go at you about being late time and time again, and you have the excuse of, but my car, or but this, it's like, instead of going, you know what, I probably should just try and leave a little bit earlier when I go to stuff instead of being late all the time. Like, rather than, getting triggered by stuff, going, okay, where's the truth in what they're saying?
Yeah.
So that's just a really good one that I like to do when someone does criticize me in any way, before reacting to it, going, oh, you know what? You are right. And it defuses so many arguments when people like criticize you, maybe in a bit of an aggressive way to create an argument. And then you go, you know what? You're right. It kind of diffuses any argument because you go, okay, I've got the control now to make a change to get a different outcome next time. Whereas when you blame everything else, the ref, the accountant, everyone else's fault, it's like, then you can't really do much to change the next outcome. Whereas when you take on the responsibility, you go, oh, okay, maybe I can do something different. I'll take that criticism on. And then there's the other side of criticism, which is really hard sometimes to decipher if it is constructive or not. But then that's what I call destructive criticism. When someone's usually saying something to you to bring you down, to make themselves feel better, it's usually coming from their own insecurity. Yeah. And with that, and it's really hard sometimes, I just try and have empathy for the person. Like, what are they going through for them to be acting like this? Like, and I'll give you an example of this through driving. It's a good one. I'm sure there's a few people listening out there that might get a little bit of road rage here and there if someone cuts you off in traffic and you get quite frustrated. I was down in Melbourne a couple of years ago, and a friend of mine has a farm a few hours out of Melbourne, out near Shepparton, and we were driving home from Shepparton back to Melbourne this one day, and he said to me, we'll listen to one of my podcasts, and the guest was talking about empathy, and my mate was like, I'll give you a great story about empathy. And I was like, all right, fire away. And he goes, I was driving along this one-way each way road that we were literally driving on at that moment back to Melbourne, and he said, and there was this car that was just driving up my arse this one day, like on the horn, like a maniac, and he couldn't get past because it was quite busy traffic, and then eventually he sped past me when he got a gap. And he thought nothing of it. And then he saw that car in the driveway at a party like 3 weeks later. And he's like, that was that car of that guy who was driving like a maniac. So he eventually worked out who the guy was at the party and said to him, like, was that you driving home from Shepparton the other day like a maniac? And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He's like, what do you mean? And like, it's all good. Like, is everything okay? And he's like, oh, I just got a call from my family that our family home was on fire back in Melbourne, and I was trying to race back to save as much as I could. And I was like, the amount of times that someone's done something and I judged them and wanted to yell out the window and not actually gone like, as long as I don't crash and it, ruins my day, ruins my car, and it doesn't, cause me that much of of a challenge, then rather than react to it, go like, you know what, I hope your day gets better. And that's what empathy is. Not judging, not getting furious, being curious. I wonder what they're going through, why they're doing this, rather than get angry at them, going, you know what, I wonder why they're acting this way. If it doesn't, fully ruin my day, I'm not going to let it. Like, it's a choice. Yes. So that's what I, take as destructive criticism. When someone's throwing something at you, instead of being furious back at them, being curious. Why are you being like this to me? Like, I don't want it to ruin my day as well. So, I don't know, there's just two ways that I've found really helped me and have changed with time, criticism. Like, I used to hate both of them. I'd be the one who'd react to someone, but it would be destructive criticism, or I'd be the one that I'd react back to constructive criticism too. I'd have an excuse and it was never my fault. Whereas now I'm like, it's good when it's your fault because you can make change to improve from it.
I love that. I love like how you say, oh, it's good that it's my fault, because then you have control over change.
Exactly.
Because it can feel really disheartening when you're, like you said before, you're constantly blaming other people. You think the world's against you. But it's like, no.
It's a victim mindset.
The victim mentality. That's so powerful, and I hope my community can take this as a little challenge next time, that someone else does upsets you or challenges you. Just choose how you respond. We get to choose. We have a choice. I loved that little story.
I like that little story.
Wow, I got shivers.
Like I said, that was the first time I learned about this, be curious, not furious, and it fits perfectly in that little exercise of when somebody is criticizing you or someone is being really mean to you and you want to engage in it, instead of being furious back with them, don't fight fire with fire. Just be like, okay, I'll be curious why they're acting like this, I hope your day gets better, rather than, letting it ruin my day too.
And often I think we react in a big way, or we have big feelings towards something that someone said to us, if it's like a reflection of something we're struggling with or we're self-conscious about. Like, I just remembered now this comment that I got years and years and years ago that I still remember to this day, because I used to get a lot of online hate when I was filming, after I filmed H2O, but it was out. And this girl commented on a photo of me in America and said, "You selfish brat, you're always traveling," or something like that. Like, this life has just been landed on your lap. That was something like that. And I was so upset and so offended because there was no truth in it. But I had to then sit and be like, why does this affect me so much? Like, why am I so affected by this? So I did some self-reflection on that, but that's kind of another story. But the point of this story is I bit back. I wrote back and I was like, you have no idea. And I never would respond to haters. But this one just really got me. And I wrote back and I was like, I work so hard for my money. Like at that time I was working like 3 casual jobs and I'd pay for my acting visa and get to America. Like, you don't know. And bit back. And then she wrote back this beautiful message being like, I am so... Because I put a bit of a lesson in there, you know. This is when I just started Pass Around the Smile. So I was like, you know, please just try and see through love and empathy. Yeah. This has been really hard for me and I'm really proud to be over here in America. Like, please just think about what you're doing. And she wrote this big, beautiful message back about how she was struggling with depression and anxiety and that she was judging other people and that she wished she had what I had. And then, you know, we ended up having this conversation back and forth and I was like, oh, this is beautiful. And it took a bit to get there.
Exactly.
But yeah, be curious.
It's fascinating. Like, I had one similar to that, but I didn't have the same outcome last week when my sister had her baby. She'd done her announcement post and I went and met Bobby for the first time and I put up like a Instagram reel, like with just me, with my first ever niece. And like all the comments are overwhelmingly positive. And then this one person just like from their wedding photography business page from America just commented like, of course you'd be the first one to post a video, always trying to like leverage off your sister and Fisher's profile to like blah blah blah. And I was just like, oh my God. So I deleted the comment and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna attach it. And then they wrote another one going like, yeah, you would delete, look at you feeling guilty that you blah blah blah, like so cringe. So I was like, I deleted again. I just sent the person a DM going like, hey, is everything all like, have I done something to upset you? Like, you've never met me or anyone in my family. I was with my sister and she said it's completely fine to post what I did. And then she wrote back like another thing going like, I found out from your video about the baby, like if you would have listened to her podcast, you would have known that she didn't want family or anyone posting until after her. And I was like, what are you talking about?
She's your sister. You're right there with her.
I was like, what are you talking about? And then I like went to like explain myself again and then the person just like self-imploded and was just like, oh my God, you're so cringe, stop writing to me. And I was just like,
oh my God.
And
it. Not and I was worth just like, your energy
I was like,
at all.
I don't know why I engaged with this person, but yeah, just blocked them both. But
and off the business profile?
Yeah, and I was like, hey, you're like meant to be like a wedding photographer promoting love and here you are like literally like smearing hate on a comment section where there's thousands of nice comments of people saying like, congratulations being an aunt or beautiful like baby, so happy for your sister. And I was just like, anyway, but I'll give you one more that's very, very recent for me and a time that I didn't take the criticism well.
Right.
And it's from my relationship in the last like 2 days. So this is just a good one to show people that I get this wrong all the time and I'm trying to learn from it. Yeah. So on Saturday, my partner Carol, she's amazing, just said to me like, hey, I'd love to go like out to dinner or like on a bit of a date afternoon. We haven't really done that for a while, blah, blah. So I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. I have like very bad fashion sense at the best of times. But I kind of live in the merch that I do with my business, The Good Human Factory. And that afternoon, I kind of just, as I do, just like chucked on my Good Human Factory shirt and sort of had like whatever. I didn't put in too much effort. Yeah. And she said to me like, hey, it'd be nice like if you put in a little bit more effort, like when we go on a date afternoon to like, you know, look nice for me. And I let the ego get it. To be honest, I said to her, I was like, yeah, no, it doesn't bother me. Like, I'll wear whatever you want. Like, yeah, here, you pick for me then. And kind of like a little bit spitefully, resentfully was like, well, you pick for me then. I really don't care. Yeah. And then kind of was like, here, there's this one. And kind of like, you know, played it up a bit instead of being mature and look at her in the eye and saying like, and then I kind of got to the end of it and went like, you know what? I was triggered there because you were right. I wasn't putting in enough effort to that. And I felt guilty that I wasn't. And that's why I acted a bit childish in my response. If you pick it then, like, it was like, you know what? And then we got to the end of it and we had like our little few words and, you know, had to have a conversation. And then eventually I was like, you know what? You are completely right. Like, I do need to put in more effort. That was me, you know, responding to or reacting to you calling me out on it rather than being, mature about it and going, you know what, you are right. Like, here, let me pick something. So, like, it happens to me the best of times, And
good
so I'm not trying to say I'm far from perfect. And that was a moment that, like, I had to put into practice some of the learnings that I'd try and teach and be like, you know what, she's completely right. Like, am reacting to that because she's right, and it's usually a good sign when we react to something that the person is right, that where's the truth in what she's saying. If she is right, I should have put in more effort to look a little bit nicer.
And sometimes it takes a bit of time to you react, and then you feel bad, and then you think about it, and then you're like, here we are again, because we're not perfect. We are not perfect. And good on you two for communicating about it. Again, communication is so important.
For sure.
Yeah, it's refreshing to hear. I think a lot of people will love hearing that. I get a lot of questions about relationships in my community, so I think that a lot of people will really like hearing that.
It's good for, I mean, it's hard when your partner calls you out on something that seems so insignificant, because as I said at the start, I do not care too much about my image when it comes to how I dress. I have a terrible dress sense, so doesn't even faze me, so I didn't really think too much about it. But then upon reflection, I was like, you know what, it would feel nice for her if I did put in a bit of effort. And I was like, you know what, it makes sense.
I have a little story to jump back on that, which actually happened last night, something that Luke kind of called me out on. So I'm obviously I've got a baby, she's 14 weeks. The first 12 weeks, my hormones were here, there and everywhere. So things would happen, like, for example, when we trying her on a bottle, we're trying to do a bottle a day of my breast milk, and she wouldn't take it, but we've warmed it so it would then be wasted. And I get really upset because, it's like liquid gold. You get upset when you waste this milk. Anyway, as that would kind of happen, Luke was trying to tell me it's not a waste, like, because we're trying to do this bottle so you can have a bit of time in your day for you, and like, we're getting somewhere, and we can use it for bath milk. Again, perspective. So he was really helping me with that. And then and again, like, I have people from Pass Around Smile community being like, you're always so positive and optimistic, and it's like, no, I'm not. I am absolutely not. Anyway, so I'd fully spit the dummy, like, cry over this milk that was wasted. Anyway, last night I opened my laptop and it wouldn't turn on. It's completely broken. I don't know what's going on. And then at the same time, Luke was giving a bottle and she wasted 45 mil. Well, I shouldn't say she wasted 45 mil, but she didn't take 45 mil. Again, changing my perspective. And it all happened and I just started laughing, and Luke was like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm so fine. It's like everything clicked. And I realized that, when, like, you've got your brand new niece, I've got my brand new little baby daughter, nothing else really matters other than our family and love and health and safety. And I was getting, like, when my laptop broke last year, I absolutely had the biggest tantrum. The biggest tantrum. I let it ruin my week. And I just laughed and I shut it and I put it downstairs and I put the milk in the bath milk container, and I just ended up having a really good night. And Luke was like, are you sure you're okay? And I was like, yes, I am. It's all clicked. And it took a while, but perspective.
Yeah. If we stuff something or something doesn't go how we meant it to go, unless we, like, unless it's like I don't know how to explain this. I see people, like, I'll give you an example again of, like, my dad will, for one, like, someone cut him off in traffic or something, like, what's like an example of this? I'll give you a stupid example, but
I love a stupid example.
Someone will, like, drop an egg and it'll go on the ground and someone will be like, oh, you idiot, like, get super angry at themselves about it. It's like, if you didn't mean to do it, then,
and would you treat yourself a friend, like if your friend dropped the egg, would you yell at them and be like, you stupid idiot? Or
even if they did, like, oh, you got something on my cup. It's like, if I didn't mean to do it, then like, why am I going to let this ruin my day? Like, unless you, like, intentionally did something and stuffed it up.
And then it causes for self-reflection.
Yeah, but it's like when somebody
forgive yourself and
does something accidentally and people get super frustrated at it, I'm like, oh, you lost that little battle there. It's like, we have the choice to respond, like, how we react to stuff every day. But so many of us, like, take away that choice and just, like, let our reaction take over. It's like, I just laugh at stuff like that as well. Like, that's why I brought that up, because, like, you're saying you just laugh at it. It's like, when you just laugh at stuff and go, oh, I didn't mean to drop the egg. Like, that's
Yes.
kind of funny, really, you know? Like,
Exactly. Like, I texted my mum last night and I said, my laptop just broke, he. And mum wrote back saying, why are you laughing? And I was like, because it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, it is.
It really
like, what
doesn't
it
matter.
is. Like, I didn't mean for it. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to let it make me angry for the whole week or, like, frustrated or, like...
And it really was, for me anyway, it was a real big realization of how far I've come and how much, like, you know, having indigo has changed my perception of these little things that I used to make so big, that were so small, and then just, you know, get bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden, all of these negative things are happening because your negative energy is rising. You're attracting the same back. But it just really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I think we might end on that. Can you tell my community, though, where they can find you, your communities, and maybe just a little bit about like the school chats and stuff that you do as well?
Yeah, so I'm sure you probably got some school teacher
Yes, I
listeners
do a
on
lot
here.
actually.
Yeah, so I guess my main business that I do is like, well, 60% of the work that I do is like high school workshops, sharing my story, but kind of trying to make mental health cool, being a young professional, well, ex-professional athlete now, but still quite young, and all the ambassadors who help me spread my message are kind of world-leading athletes, young Australian Olympians, and a whole bunch of cool people trying to help me just make mental health cool and make kids go, oh, it doesn't have to be this heavy topic that we kind of frown. Like, I walk into schools and kids, I say, I'm here to talk about mental health, and they go, oh. But then by the end of it, they go, oh, that was nothing like what I thought. I've actually got a few skills that I can now implement. So, if you want to learn more about the workshops that I run for high schools or for corporate groups or sporting clubs, you can find that on my website, thegoodhumanfactory.com.
And I'll put that link in the show notes.
Yeah, you can find
as well,
that, I'm sure, in the show notes. Same thing, my merchandise is on the website. You can find basically everything about the Good Human Factory over there. What else? My podcast, if you're obviously a podcast listener listening to this, after you've binged every one of Cleo's podcasts, you can check out my podcast. It's called Good Humans with Cooper Chapman. There's a couple hundred episodes on there now. It's really good. Inspiring, cool people. So that's always a good spot to find me, but also just social media is the easiest one, at Cooper Chapman on Instagram and TikTok. And same thing with Good Human Factory. You can find us on social media as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, and thank you for everything you do for the world, because honestly, you're changing it.
No, likewise. It's great to come catch up, and looking forward to having a chat on my podcast with you very soon.
I'm excited. Thanks, Cooper.